Good evening and welcome to Thursday's Mom Squad. I thank everybody for joining us. Tonight we have a speaker, and the speaker's name is Adrienne Robertiello, and she is a special health care educator at Children's Specialized Hospital and a mom of 3 children, one with a complex mix of disabilities, including autism spectrum disorder. Adrienne, we welcome you and are excited to see your presentation. We are going to allow Adrienne to present, and once Adrienne is done presenting, we will stop the recording to have an open dialogue and questions. Adrienne, welcome.
Thank you very much. And I know that you kind of asked me to share a little bit about how I became a special health care educator at Children's. I've been at Children's Specialized for, oh my gosh, about 13, 14 years now. And originally it started because my son at a very young age with complex, disabilities, I have 3 kids, but one of them very much complex disabilities. I would go out in the community and I would try to be doing anything and everything was kind of, we don't have the resources, we can't do that here, we don't know how, we just don't have it. And, Mama Bear was like, that's not good enough for me, right? So I headed over, after everything, I just headed over to my local library, and I went to the library director and I said, I made a list, which of these things here can you help me with? And she was like, well, all of them. And I'm like, excuse me? And she says, look up on my wall. And I looked up on the wall, and the mission statement on the wall was for all people, right? And I don't remember exactly how it read, but I just remember it was for all. So that kind of yes started a whole series of lots of things. The first thing was something called Libraries and Autism We're Connected, where we worked on a project. We got a grant to help libraries, particularly 2 libraries, but then it went nationwide in Canada. But it was really about helping library programming be more inclusive for people with autism. We brought in Autism New Jersey, we brought in Children's Specialized Hospital, and that won a national award from with the libraries. And ever since that's still going. I'm no longer part of it, but it's still going throughout our country, and I'm very excited. So I guess that's how this all started and how I got it connected with Children's. But it was because of my son, and it was because of that Mama Bear, the Mom Squad here, going out and doing something. And so never ever think that conversation can't lead to change and real change. I'm very excited in my career right now of the people that I speak with nationwide who I connect with in meaningful and changing ways to change lives in small and big ways. And I'm here today. Hopefully we can share together in personal ways that can help each other in our personal lives, and hopefully plant some seeds for you to go out and change some others. So I would love to start this. I might go through this beginning part, but kind of almost technical part a little quicker, because I'd love to share some conversation with you and kind of get personal about myself, about you guys, and what's going on with the SIBs in your family.
That would be great, Adrienne.
Sure. So you can see here my screen, okay? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So generally speaking, each one of us have different personalities, interests, choices, life paths, coping skills, goals, right? Every one of us is an individual person with so many great things, and different is great, right? And so are our kids, and our kids are very different. And I have 3 children, and they are so different. There's that whole nature nurture thing. And I just said, there's just what makes them, right? And so I've come to learn in many years that I can't force certain relationships or certain interactions to happen. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen naturally because of who they are. So I say my older daughter would be the one who's going to be there and being the compassionate one and the one who's there with them by his side, whereas my other daughter would be fighting the insurance company, right? So it's really, they're very different people, and I guess I definitely want to say, starting here, that we can't force anything. We can't force relationships or force things the way that we would want them to be. So some of it has to be naturally, but there's lots of things that we can do to nurture those relationships. So typically, regular kids, all kids, are, very often, and everybody's different, some that get along and some don't. We all, we all have, any of us who have siblings know that they are definitely differ drastically. But many times siblings either are lifelong companions, there's uncertainty in those relationships, and the family and the extended family, there's all these things that have parts of that relationship, the sibling rivalry, their peers and the friends of the siblings. They serve as role models to each other. They serve as sources of information, like the cool stuff and what do I do now, brother or sister, or other things. And then it has an impact on their resiliency, right? It helps them become just kind of stronger, or whatever emotional aspects of that relationship, it really helps to support very often. And not to say all relationships are good, right? But typically, whether they're typical or with special needs, right, they're definitely have kind of all of these same types of characteristics. So some of the positive characteristics are, when we're talking about having one of the siblings that has a disability, we see some additional maturity involved. There's additional responsibility. There's increased compassion. I see that all the time. Empathy, generosity, flexibility. I can go through a lot of these things, but you can see that, our kids take on something a little different when we have a child with a disability that's within that family, right? It just, I know my own person, my oldest daughter matured way earlier than her peers, right? And so she was kind of at a different place. And kind of, it was really affecting her personal life because she was in a personal different space and place with her friends. And we'll talk about that a little later. So some potential challenges are, what's going to happen in my future, mom? What's this going to look like? Am I going to have to take care of him or her? They overcompensate. They do something called, and we want to avoid the parentification, where we're making our kids the parents, right? And they didn't buy into that, right? This is their brother or sister, and it should be that sibling relationship, not necessarily the parent relationship that sometimes happens without us even knowing it, because we're just involved in so many things. And hey, can you do this? Can you take care of that? And we're putting them in a place that they may not be developmentally ready for. They may have some isolation from their peers, needing for information about that disability or about what, just kind of more information. Social difficulties, as I said, they may be angry or resenting this. They may be envious of their peers or others who have siblings who are, quote, typical or normal. They could be lonely, confused, and I know, and I think a lot of people here know, it disrupts routine, right? It's just where a typical kid might, do X, Y, and Z. Now we have a therapy appointment. Now we have somebody coming over our house for this, or school's different. So there's definitely a disruption of routine with many families who have disabilities. So some common coping responses of our siblings, right? So they may internalize this. This we don't necessarily want because it builds up inside, and we really don't. You okay there? Okay. So some ambivalence, some wishful thinking. I wish that my brother or sister was, quote, normal, or I wish I was able to go to Universal Studios. I wish, right? Things that they wish they had that they can't have because of the disability maybe that's preventing them. And it could be really, families could be a very typical family, but they still wish for something that is different because they feel that their family is different with a child with a disability, a sibling. they may externalize this and really come out and be very vocal about what's going on. And some kids with many of our siblings with disabilities turn out and go into those careers, and they're very vocal in advocacy and a lot of things related to disability because they live it and they breathe it every day. There could be, unfortunately, some aggressive or attention-seeking behavior. They may be problem solvers, right? They have to figure this out. So mom or dad are busy with therapies or busy with other, medical or disability related things, and they got to figure out things on their own. And so it definitely builds some problem solving skills and various types of social supports. So that's kind of some of the coping responses. So some other potential factors we have, depending on your family, families are families, and we all have stresses, whether that be medical issues or mother-in-laws, father-in-laws, the things that happen as a typical family. We all have stresses with work and medical and finances. And so we have lots of dynamics. And I kind of put this little 7 dwarfs because we all have our personalities in there, right? Everybody's different, and everybody, has their thing. Everybody's family is very, very different. We all have our characteristics, as we talked about before. It can definitely involve the birth order, the age or the age difference between the siblings, a young or old, or maybe sibs are close together. The healthcare experiences that are involved. Are we at hospitals? Are we in therapies? What kind of healthcare factors are part of that family experience? What the diagnosis is it intellectual? Is it a physical? Do these things affect going on vacation, right? If someone's in a wheelchair and there's access issues, or if someone's got developmental or behavioral issues or other situations, those things, the diagnosis can really affect the family. Coping styles, as we talked about, and some other supports. And then there are risks for siblings with either mental health issues, developmental disabilities, and others. So when you have a child with a autism or disability, you very often can have an increased risk of having a second or even third child with some type of disorder or medical or healthcare issue. So siblings of kids with autism are at increased risk for also having autism or language disorder and or mental health issues such as ADHD, OCD, anxiety. So put all this factor into your siblings, and it really becomes a very complex web of stuff that a lot of people aren't used to, and we have to really adjust for it. So it is difficult. And I personally, in my family, they always say little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems, and it just changes along the way, and it's very different as time goes on. So what siblings want and benefit from? So our sibs, they definitely want to be valued individually, like who they are, what they like. If they like DC and Marvel comics, if they are really great at science or math, or if whatever their individual interest and their place in the family, they want to be valued for that. They want to be acknowledged for the work and their personality and who they are as a person. They need clear expectations. Here we are, we're talking about parentalization, but what is expected of these kids, right? Where do they need to know, this is what you expect from me, Mom? Do you need just some help around the house? Do you need me to whatever? But they need to have that clearly described, because without that information, it really can be very challenging emotionally for them. They need to know that that your support is unconditional. They need real childhood experiences, right? So kids will be kids. And I will say, in that younger age, I am guilty, and I think about this very often. We didn't do a lot of those typical kid things that, those interactions at the playgrounds and all these things. Not to say that they were excluded from them, but I felt that they didn't have enough of them. And without those social interactions, kids with kids, you learn so much as young children, how to interact, kind of everything you need to know about life you learn as a kid, right? The sharing, the social rules and interactions and all of that. And so without those, they're missing out on some really valuable childhood experiences. They want, quote, what's normal relationships. They want to be listened to, and they want to have peers. So these are really very important things that siblings want and need and benefit from. So what we want to do is we want to encourage our siblings to talk to other people, get as much knowledge, whether you give that to them or give them the source of that information. Teach others what it's like for your family to have that kind of those relationships that you have. And I really advocate for this very much in all aspects of my presentations and the education that I do. We want to encourage people to see the similarities in each other rather than the differences. I can't emphasize that enough. And you know, we want to help them to be able to not feel guilty or to be free to ask for help, that it's not something bad to ask for help, to think of the positives. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Think about the positives of all this and not all the doom and gloom that it might seem like. They need to know that they're not alone. And there are other groups, there's sibling groups that are out there. Many healthcare organizations have things called, you know, SIB clubs or SIB shops, or there's so many things that they're available right now. And but they need to know that they're not alone in this. Very often at schools, they have groups that, you know, they can go to their counselor and kind of work on that together with them and be able to talk. Balanced perspectives, and we want them to be a brother and sister, as we said before, the way they are, the way they need to, not the way that we expect a typical brother and sister to be, and it very well might be, but however they feel that they would like to be that sibling to the other kids. We do need to provide information for the siblings. So we recommend to do it early and often in developmentally and in age-appropriate ways. We don't necessarily know when to tell or how to tell or what to tell, but we want to be as real and authentic as possible. We want to make sure it's accurate information. We want to make sure that you're all ears when they want to know they want to know that you're open and available to share that information and that you're not holding anything back. And always make sure you check them for understanding. They may misinterpret something or they may have heard something, and we want to make sure what they know is accurate and that they're not misunderstanding what's going on. And generally speaking, this is not my quote, but this is definitely something that we should be sharing with our children and all people, is that disability is a natural part of the human experience. So whether our children or any of us are born, you know, with any type of condition, disorder, disability, it could happen as an injury or an accident throughout our lives. It could be a disability that happens as a result of our aging, and it may not affect us till when we're much older, right? It could be a short-term disability, a long-term, a lifelong, but it's who we are as people. This will inevitably affect us in every way. And so it's very helpful for us to communicate with our kids and let them be okay with that. Disability is normal. It's part of life. It's not, you know, oh, it's, you know, that's the disabled family, right? And that's us, the typical family. We are who we are, and that should be a normal part of living. And that we all have a long way to come with that in society, but we want to help normalize that as much as possible. Sibling conflicts. Absolutely a natural part of any family, right? So this is all kids have their thing, and that's a natural part of their development. But to help with these types of things, and of course we have, you know, some sensitivities going on, and we don't want any any kid to be traumatized by any of this. So we want to model for them and how to interact with our child. They may not know how to, if your child has autism, what do I do when he or she is repeating what I say, or, there's just, they need to know how to, right? And so modeling that, setting limits and consequences on behaviors, encouraging cooperation, being neutral, and that's a hard part as a parent, but definitely being neutral, consistency, discipline, creativity, all these are part of any kind of sibling conflicts. We just may have to kind of go into that a little more creatively when we have a child with disability. Let's see, are you able to, I just want to check, are you able to see on my screen okay? Because it says on my screen that my screen is paused.
I am still on your first slide. So if you have gone through slides, we have not seen them. I wasn't sure if you were utilizing the slides. My apologies.
I'm on like the 15th slide here. So how do I do that? How do I fix that just to show you guys? Because it says my screen sharing is paused and I don't know why. That is so interesting.
Anybody on the call familiar with how that would work? Why her screen is saying it's paused if she's sharing?
I'm just going to exit out of my, that is so.
Yeah, you might want to stop sharing and reshare. It might just be bandwidth when you click the button and it got stuck.
What do you see right now?
We see a slide that says starts with siblings may go through ups and downs.
Yeah. So
okay.
I'm not going to go through my slides, but tell me you can see this, right?
Yes.
Yes. Right, so I'm going to go through. This is what I've been talking about. I just tell me you can see it. So I'm going to.
I am so sorry, Adrienne. I should have said something. I was like, okay, my apologies.
No, that's okay. So, so I'm just going to not speak and I'm just going to go through these till we catch up to where we were. So, and so I'm going to make sure you guys get a copy of this so you can see all these tips and everything that I've been talking about.
Thank you, Adrienne.
So all of these, I hear talking about the 7 dwarfs over here and you didn't even see them. Okay, so we have what they benefit from, encouraging what we want to encourage our sibs to do, providing information to our siblings about disability being a natural part of the human experience. Conflicts are a natural part of the development, and I think we're caught up. Yes?
There you go.
See, okay, so I promise I will send you this so that you don't have to refer back and you've got everything we need. Okay,
thank you.
So, so all siblings, siblings may go through ups and downs and just, so is that beeping anything I need to?
No, it's nothing on your end. I'm trying to make sure everybody is muted.
Okay. So ups and downs are typical for any child at all, and that is normal. So it's important, and I'm going to emphasize this, and hopefully we'll talk about this when we talk about our own personal experiences, that we have to determine what our roles are in our own personal families, right? So what, depending on the severity of a disorder, depending on the siblings and their, if they're affected in any way by any disorders, their relationships, their personalities. So we have to kind of set limits and make sure we identify, that we don't push our kids to go any farther than they need to go. I'm going to say, be the parent that you need to be for the children you have, right? We don't want to try to be that parent. I always had felt guilty about, why can't I be like, Mary or Pete or whatever it is. And it's just I really became very freeing to me when I just had to realize I just had to be the parent that I needed to be for my kids. And whether that be with disabilities or not, each of my kids needs something different from me. And the hard part was at the end of the night, when I put my head on the pillow and trying to think, did I balance everybody? Did I give everybody what they needed, including myself, including my husband, right? That was the hard thing at the end of the day, putting my head on the pillow. I still wonder about that because everybody has something they need, and we don't always have the time of the day or the energy to give it to everybody, right? And so not every day has to look the same, right? But we kind of always are. I'm always reflecting upon, have I done that? Am I doing that? And it's just really important for just kind of reflecting upon that, and also not feeling guilty if you haven't, right? We just have to be conscious and aware of it as we go along. All parents need support, with disabilities or not, but we know that there is so much more that many of us need, and we have absolute permission to feel those feelings that we feel, and the overwhelmingness, the guilt, the sadness, the anger, all of those things, and that balancing of all the families. All of these feelings are okay to feel, and we should give ourselves permission to feel them. Then there's planning for the future, right? And so our kids wonder, what is going to happen to me when I grow up? What's going to happen to my sibling? All of that. And so we have to make some decisions. And sometimes we're only planning for a year, up to 3 years in advance. Sometimes we are planning for many years ahead, and depending on the age of the child. But we really do need to include those siblings in those discussions, depending on their age, depending on what they can understand, and how deep and how involved you want them to get. But we do need to be honest with them. We do need to keep them in the loop. We don't want to scare them. We don't want them to think that there is something bigger that they're going to all of a sudden be surprised with later. And there actually may well be if something suddenly happens, but we do want to be prepared and keep our kids in the loop. So we want to ask the sibling. Asking is the thing. What do you want? What is your responsibility right now? And that can change when this child is 7 to 10 to 15 to 18 to 21, right? What would you, when we go, what is it that you want out of this? Because I don't want you to take on anything else that you may not want to do, right? And I want to make sure I prepare, to honor and respect your wishes, right? So really important to ask and keep that in the conversation. Parent strategy. So again, ask and respect, open and honest answers, participation, consistency. We talked about a lot of this. Safety, keeping a safe environment is so important. It is so hard in so many things that we're dealing with, and all of our siblings need to know it's going to be okay. One way or the other, they're going to be okay. You're going to make sure they are safe and not harmed in any of this. Laughing, really important, even though many times we don't feel like we can. So I'm going to be flat out honest and open with something that happens in our house. We call it Code Brown. So my son is not toilet trained. He's in a diaper, he's in whatever he is. And all of a sudden at 11 o'clock at night, after a full day of work and everything else that's going on, to open up a door and see that Code Brown is horrible feeling. And sometimes it's so devastating, and you're like, all right, everybody, we need the towel, we need the disinfectant, we need to clean this all up, right? It's part of our lives. And some days, one day I said to, I'm going to say Alexa right here, she's going to turn on, but I said to Alexa, I say, play the poo-poo song. And I blasted that at level 8, and out came this song, and I'm cleaning up the poop to this song and laughing, belly laughing, right? So sometimes you just got to let that release come in laughter, because it's what we need, and we don't laugh enough. So we need to laugh more. And that little note on the bottom is very important. We do not want to force our siblings to be included with the friends. Come on, Mary, you go out with John and John's friends, because Johnny has a right to have his friends and talk to his friends about all that's going on, and not necessarily always have to include the siblings. So that's really important, to not have that forcing going on there together. And lastly, this last group of slides I want to talk about is all about you, right? So we have so many things that we have to do every day, and we take on so much. And I had to step back and say, you know what, with work, with laundry, with everything else that's going on, you can't do everything, right? And it's important to take care of yourself, right? So we have to stop that everything gets done and prioritizing everything that's on our list. And sometimes getting one thing done is a huge thing, because so many things that are involved in what we do take so much time and energy. So setting yourself up for failure by putting so many things on the things you have to do, really is demoralizing, right? So we really have to give ourselves credit and give ourselves less to do, and check that off and give ourselves the credit that we need for completing those things, like laundry. I'm so glad you could see the slide now, because, right, this is, at the end of the day, we've got laundry, right? Besides all these other things we have to do.
It actually looks like my dining room table right now. Yeah.
So we often put our needs on the back burner, and we really, really shouldn't. So you have permission to know you're not alone. You can ask for help. You can be yourself. Sometimes it might be texting your friend and saying, damn it, Jess, I had that code brown. I need a glass of wine, right? You know, it's whatever it is, right? So, and that balance, that whole family balance, we all have to adjust to what that is. And it's not always the way we think it should be, and it takes some adjustment to do that. So I'm not going to go into this detail, but I think the top thing says it all. It says self-care is not an option, right? We want to be able to set healthy boundaries for ourselves, limitations, take time for ourselves, make a gratitude list. We should at least have one or two things that we know we love and we have in our lives, that when things get really bad, we can be thankful for those and bring us to a better place. Laughing, remember, life is short is not just a saying. We really need to find those simple things that we appreciate in our life. And it is okay to get angry and to cry and to have your emotions. So I'm going to just give you this little tool right here. It's called the zones of regulation, and very often it's used for kids, but could be for our kids, and this could be for you. And I swear I have printed out a red, yellow, green, and blue card. I have walked around with it on the little popsicle stick, right? So blue is kind of where you are just, you're in a depressed state. You are just out of it. Nothing makes you happy. And we don't want to be in the blue, and we don't want our sibs to be blue. We want to actually be in that green. Green is all is good. We are in a good place. We can handle situations. We can get things done efficiently. Yellow is our signal to say, we've got to get back to green, right? Because that means we're headed to a place where we don't want to be. And this could be our kids too, right? We know we can learn their signals when they're going from yellow to red. And now red is not, we're not talking to anybody in red. We've hit the top of that kind of thermostat, and we just need to find our place in our space, because there's no talking to us when we're in red, right? So this is just kind of a gauge. Whether our kids are verbal or not, we can kind of teach them ways to recognize. We can even use these codes in our house. Hey, I'm yellow right now. I need some space. I need to go in my room. I need some time. And that's a great model for you that you can practice for your kids, to help them understand that, I can recognize when I'm in that yellow, and then I need to kind of find my own self-regulation skills, my own way whether that be reading, listening to music, going for a walk, so that I can get back to green and I don't head to red. So this is kind of a family coping thing, individual coping thing. I just want to share that because it really can be helpful for anybody. And I have this little sheet here, ways that we could be, what we can do when we're in blue to get to green, or when we're in yellow and we want to get back to green. So I would be happy to share this. I know it's going to be on the recording, but I'd be happy to share this document, because it really is very helpful for any person and family to help them we want to be in that green.
Thank you, Adrienne.
You're welcome. And a couple last things I have. One thing is this, I don't know if this is really readily available, but this girl, now she's in college, Julie Everbach, wrote this comic strip called Adventures from a World, and it's a sibling's perspective of having a sibling with a disability. So I really, if you could find it would be really great. And lastly, coming up in June, there is a Sibling Leadership Network conference coming up. These are really about siblings, talking to other siblings, being with other siblings, and recognizing all of those things. So I just wanted to share that with you if you have anybody who might be interested in going. And that's, I have to give the plug. So the work that I do is grant funded by Kohl's Care. So when you get those little stuffed animals and books and all that, that stuff really does go to a good cause. It really supports my work and a lot of work that people do. So I just wanted to give that plug at the end. And I am done, and we can stop recording and start talking.
Wonderful. I will stop recording now, like Adrienne said, and we will go to an open discussion.